If you want to build successful habits, it is not about trying harder, and it's not also about forcing yourself to do difficult things. It all comes down to one thing: the signals you send to your subconscious mind. Because your subconscious does not respond to effort. It responds to signals. And if you send the right signals consistently, your mind has no choice but to adapt. And when your mind adapts, building new habits becomes natural. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how to send the right signals to your subconscious so that the habits you struggle with today start to feel automatic. Because if you don't understand this, you will keep trying harder and getting the same results. But once you get it, everything begins to change. Let's get into it. Our brains thrive on evidence. That is one of the most important things you need to understand if you want to change your life. Your brain does not move because of your wishes. It does not move because of your intentions alone. It moves because of what you repeatedly prove to it. That is why so many people want to change but never do. They desire a new life. They want better habits. They want more discipline. They want to become a better version of themselves. But wanting is not enough. Your brain needs proof. You see, as human beings, we are creatures of habit. That means right now, whether you realize it or not, you are already in the habit of doing certain things. You are either in the habit of waking up early or not. You are either in the habit of following through or not. You are either in the habit of being focused or not. You are either in the habit of taking action or not. So when people say they want to build a new habit, what they are really saying is, I want to replace an old pattern with a new one. And that is where the difficulty begins. Change feels hard because the brain naturally resists what is unfamiliar. Your brain is always trying to keep you safe. And to the brain, what is safe is not always what is best. What is safe is simply what is familiar, what you already know, what you have already repeated, what you have already lived. So the moment you try to do something different, your brain starts to resist. Not because the new thing is bad, but because it is new. And anything new feels uncertain. Anything uncertain feels dangerous. And anything dangerous is rejected. This is why change can feel like you are fighting with yourself. One part of you wants to grow. One part of you wants better. One part of you knows you need to change. But another part of you keeps pulling you back. It tells you to wait. It tells you to slow down. It tells you to stay where you are. It tells you to go back to what is comfortable. And most people misunderstand this moment. They think something is wrong with them. They think they are lazy. They think they are weak. They think they are not serious enough. But that is not always the truth. Sometimes what you are really experiencing is the natural resistance of the brain to unfamiliar patterns. That is why you cannot build a new habit by only forcing yourself. You cannot build a new habit by fighting your brain every day without understanding how it works. You have to work with your brain instead of against it. That is all you have got. Your brain is the system through which your habits are formed. So if you want a habit that supports your future, you must first convince your brain that this habit is good. You must convince your brain that this habit is safe. You must convince your brain that although it feels unfamiliar now, it is the better way to live. And how do you do that? Through evidence, through proof, through repetition, through emotional reinforcement, through action. These are the signals that tell your subconscious, this is good, this is safe, this is how we are going to live now. Think about it this way. If you have lived one way for years, your brain has already accepted that way of living as normal. Even if that way of living is hurting you, even if that way of living is keeping you stuck, even if that way of living is not producing the life you want, the brain still accepts it because it has seen enough evidence for it. It has seen you repeat it enough times. It has watched you live it long enough. So now, if you suddenly want to introduce a new habit, you cannot expect your brain to just accept it immediately. That is not how it works. You must show it, again and again and again. The more you practice the new habit, the more you give your brain something new to work with. And when you add emotion to that habit, the signal becomes stronger. Because emotion tells the subconscious that this matters. Emotion tells the subconscious that this is important. Emotion tells the subconscious that this is not random, this is serious. So when a new action is repeated enough times, and it is backed by feeling, your subconscious begins to pay attention. It begins to stop seeing the habit as dangerous. It begins to stop resisting it. It begins to accept it. And once your subconscious accepts a habit, everything changes. What used to feel difficult starts to feel easier. What used to feel forced starts to feel natural. What used to require effort starts to happen automatically. You begin to do it without even thinking too much about it. It becomes part of you. It becomes part of your identity. And that is the goal. Not just to do a habit once in a while, but to become the kind of person for whom that habit is natural. That is how the human brain works. It works on belief. And belief is simply supportive evidence about an idea. If your brain has enough supportive evidence for an idea, it accepts that idea as true. And once it accepts it as true, it begins to organize your behavior around it. That is why before a habit is built, it is first rooted in belief. Belief comes first. The habit follows after. So if you want to build a new habit, do not just focus on the action alone. Ask yourself, what am I proving to my brain? What evidence am I giving it every day? Because whatever evidence you keep feeding your brain, that is what your brain will eventually believe. And whatever your brain believes deeply enough, your life will begin to reflect. So do yourself a favor. Start giving your brain better evidence. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. Through your words, through your affirmations, through your declarations, and most importantly, through your actions. Because when all of these begin to work together, they send a powerful signal to your subconscious. And before you know it, the habit you once struggled with starts becoming part of who you are. Now that you understand that your brain works based on evidence, the next thing you need to understand is this. Before any habit is formed, there is always a belief behind it. You cannot have a habit without a belief first. Every action you take consistently is supported by something you believe, whether you are aware of it or not. If you are consistent, there is a belief supporting that. If you procrastinate, there is a belief supporting that. If you follow through, there is a belief supporting that. If you quit halfway, there is also a belief supporting that. So the real question is not, how do I build a habit? The real question is, what do I believe that is producing this habit? Because once you identify that, you begin to see clearly that habits are not random. They are not accidents. They are results of what your brain has accepted as true. Now this is where repetition comes in. Your brain does not believe something because you said it once. It believes something because you have repeated it enough times. Think about it. If you hear something once, you may notice it. If you hear it a few times, you may remember it. But if you hear it again and again and again, over a long period of time, it begins to feel true. Not because it is true, but because it is familiar. This is how beliefs are formed, through repetition. This is why many of the beliefs you have today were not consciously chosen by you. You heard them growing up. You saw them in your environment. You experienced them repeatedly. And over time, your brain accepted them as truth. Now here is the important part. If repetition created your current beliefs, then repetition can also change them. This is where affirmations and declarations come in. Not as magic, but as tools to introduce a new idea to your mind. When you repeat a new belief, you are giving your brain a new piece of information. At first, your brain will reject it. It will feel strange. It will feel uncomfortable. It may even feel false. Why? Because it does not match your current evidence. But if you continue, if you keep repeating it consistently, over time, your brain starts to get used to it. It starts to recognize it. It starts to become familiar with it. And remember, what is familiar begins to feel safe. And what feels safe is accepted by the subconscious. This is how belief is built. Not instantly, but gradually, through consistent exposure. So when you say something like, "I am someone who follows through," you are not just saying words, you are planting a seed. And every time you repeat it, you water that seed. At first, nothing seems to happen. But beneath the surface, something is changing. Your brain is adjusting. Your mind is opening up to a new possibility. And this is where most people stop. They repeat it for a few days. They don't see immediate results, and they quit, not realizing that belief takes time to build. So if you truly want to build a new habit, you must first commit to building the belief behind it. And belief is built through repetition, again and again and again. But repetition alone is not enough. There is something else that makes repetition powerful, and that is what we are going to talk about next. Up to this point, you understand that belief is built through repetition. You understand that your brain accepts what is familiar. But there is something that makes this process much faster and much stronger, and that is emotion. Your subconscious mind does not respond strongly to words alone. It responds to how something feels. That is why you can hear something once and forget it, but you can experience something emotional once and remember it for years. Because emotion makes the impression deeper. Think about it. You may not remember what you did last week on a random day, but you remember moments that made you feel something. Moments of excitement, moments of fear, moments of pain, moments of joy. Why? Because emotion signals importance. Emotion tells your brain, this matters. Pay attention to this. Remember this. And your subconscious mind listens to that signal. So when you repeat a belief without emotion, the signal is weak. Your brain hears it, but it does not prioritize it. But when you repeat that same belief and you attach emotion to it, the signal becomes stronger. Now your brain begins to pay attention. Now your subconscious begins to register it. This is where most people go wrong with affirmations. They repeat the words, but they don't feel anything. They say, I am successful, I am confident, I am disciplined. But inside, there is no connection, no belief, no feeling. So the subconscious ignores it, not because it doesn't work, but because the signal is too weak. So if you want to send a strong signal to your subconscious, you must involve your body. You must feel what you are saying. When you say, I am disciplined, don't just say it. Feel what it means to be disciplined. When you say, I follow through, feel what it means to complete something. You slow down, you breathe, you connect. You make the words real inside your body. Because the more real it feels, the stronger the signal becomes. And the stronger the signal, the faster your subconscious begins to accept it. This is how you move from just repeating words to actually programming your mind. Repetition gives your brain something to recognize. Emotion tells your brain it is important. And when you combine both, you begin to send a signal your subconscious cannot ignore. But even with repetition and emotion, there is still one final piece that completes the process. And this is the part that turns belief into reality. You now understand that repetition builds familiarity. You understand that emotion strengthens the signal. But there is one final piece that makes everything work, and that is action. Because no matter how many times you repeat something, no matter how deeply you feel it, if there is no action, your brain will not fully believe it. Why? Because your subconscious mind believes proof more than words. Words are signals, but action is evidence, and your brain thrives on evidence. This is where most people fail. They repeat affirmations, they try to feel it, but they don't act in alignment with what they are saying. So there is a disconnect. They say, I am disciplined, but their actions show inconsistency. They say, I follow through, but they keep quitting halfway. And your subconscious sees that. It doesn't listen to what you say, it watches what you do. So when your words and your actions do not match, your brain believes your actions. That is why nothing changes. But the moment you begin to act, even in small ways, everything begins to shift. Because now, you are not just sending a signal, you are giving proof. When you say, I am consistent, and you actually follow through, even once, that is evidence. When you say, "I am focused," and you sit down and complete a task, that is evidence. And every time you repeat that action, you strengthen the signal. You are now combining repetition, emotion, and action. And this combination is what convinces your subconscious mind. At first, it will still resist. It will feel uncomfortable. It will feel unnatural. But if you keep going, if you continue to act in alignment with what you are saying, your brain begins to accept it. It starts to see a new pattern. It starts to recognize a new way of operating. And over time, that new pattern becomes normal. And once it becomes normal, the habit becomes automatic. You no longer struggle. You no longer force it. You no longer overthink it. You simply do it. That is when the habit becomes part of your identity. And that is the goal. Not just to perform a habit occasionally, but to become the kind of person for whom that habit is natural. That is how you send strong signals to your subconscious and build habits that last. Now let's bring everything together. If you want to build habits that actually last, you have to understand this simple principle. Your subconscious mind responds to signals, not intentions. So if you want your mind to change, you must send the right signals. First, repetition. You repeat the idea again and again until it becomes familiar. Second, emotion. You don't just say the words, you feel them. You make them real in your body. Third, action. You act in alignment with what you are saying. You give your mind proof. When you combine these three, repetition, emotion, and action, you send a strong signal to your subconscious mind. And over time, your mind accepts it. It adapts, and it begins to operate in that new way. That is when habits become automatic. That is when change becomes natural. That is when you stop forcing and start becoming. So stop trying harder and start sending better signals. If you got value from this, share it with someone who needs to understand this. And don't just watch this once, go through it again, because it is repetition that makes it stick. I'll see you in the next video.